Um, Forget about the PowerPoint, pretty boring, it's only wallpaper. But 3 decades almost in journalism, nearly 3 decades in defence, and all of them spent in probably what was one of the most fascinating times of change. Change in mass communications and development. Because there were years of rapid change. Media came out, when I started, it was almost Dickensian. Days when you looked in your hip pocket, had I changed to the phone through. No such things as mobile phones, fax, all sorts of things changed. Fascinating. Changes too in defence, and my transition was from the media side to defence side. And I was subject to defence policy and defence communications. So I've been at the forefront or the face of that change. So the changes have taken place in how information and influence has been delivered to audiences, and huge changes in how you as individuals and organisations actually push out information and use that to influence the audiences and communities. Evolution is one way of looking at it. Actually, I prefer revolution. And it's a revolution that is continuing. It will never come to an end. Since media and journalism started back 150, 200 years ago, it's always been subject to change, been very rapid recently. Revolution brings casualties. Media, traditional media itself has been one of those casualties. Today, for example, and I used to sit on the SETJ, today only around a third of young people who gain journalistic qualifications are likely to find themselves in employment in traditional media. Tomorrow, and the day after, that figure is going to be a lot less. So the changes have been pretty remarkable, and we need to take account of that. Defence has also faced those changes over the years. Far cry, as we heard from the Hearts and Minds campaign of the late 60s, early 70s. And then, of course, in the 70s, the manipulation or attempts or misinterpretation of psyops, if you like, or influence. Lots of people made lots of mistakes in those days. Thankfully, I was on the other side of the coin. But it came back to bite me, because almost 20 years after the beginning of Up Banner, I was in Londonderry, and that's when I was hit with, what are you doing? Are you working now with the Lisburn lie machine? That was a tag back from the early 70s when there was a misinterpretation and a misintent of psyops. But that tag stuck over the years. The TAPIO structure that we used to have, the TA public information officers, they came, they went, they're gone, dead, never more to be heard of. Some great people, and I used to know a lot of them. Great people, great enthusiastic people. The media ops group, the volunteers, journalists, reporters who worked day and daily in media, and at the weekend then donned their uniforms. I've been with them in the Balkans, I've been with them in Bosnia, I've been with them in Sierra Leone, East Timor, Afghanistan. Wonderful people. That's an organisation that rose. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. We're in a new world order. Communications revolution is going to continue, and it's going to produce more casualties in terms of media. And defence, I'm afraid, is not isolated. But, and this is the important bit, revolution and evolution does bring opportunity. It's been like crisis communications. I used to love the interpretation of the Mandarin word for crisis in Chinese. The symbols stand for danger or opportunity. And when you go into a crisis, you have a choice. Follow the rules stick to the procedures, and there's a good opportunity that you'll walk away from it. Don't, I'm afraid, you're in the bottom of that hole, you're down there on your own. But I've also learned over the years that despite those changes, there are constants. Constants that have held true through the media, constants that are very easily transferable across to social media. It doesn't matter to me who breezes into Army Media and Comms every 2 years with a new uniform, new ideas, who takes over as Chief Press Officer in the Ministry of Defence and decides to introduce the latest acronyms, and you get the PR lobbies coming out in pinstripes hitting you with all sorts of terminology. Cut the chaff. Let's get back to the basics. And the basics are still the constant truths of how you handle and how you process information and how you deal with it. And as I say, they are so easily transferable to social media, giving potential. Interviewing techniques, tactics, news identification, exploitation, crisis communications, the principles, coordination, execution. There's none of them are actually rocket science, but there are organisations and people out there who will hit you with acronyms and try and tell you that they are a science, an art. They're not, they're basic principles. And with help from the Defence Press Office, you can access that structure and those techniques and those tips. Now, I've also been witness to the toxic, and I've seen that word actually used on Twitter tonight, referring to the Chief Constable, who's made certain comments, and he's being accused now of making toxic insinuations on a political scenario. Not for me to say, well, that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's an interesting word. But I have seen organisations making toxic comment because they didn't identify what was news, what was background, or what was comment. There's a place for each. There's a place for news, there's a place for background information. I can work with those. When it comes to comment, dangerous, very dangerous. Media communications, it's a very blunt tool. If you like, in your terminology, it's a scattergun. It's not a sniper's rifle, so it's not a one-shot hits target. But you need to focus on your audience, you need to focus on your message, and if you keep your audience within that zone, you're going to hit them. You're going to get through to them. Now, the difficult thing about that is that people will form their opinions, make up their minds, not based on just one piece of information, but on lots. And I remember going back a little bit to, well, let's be honest about it in this community, jigsaws. And the estimate was that people made a thought on about 15,000 pieces of information that went into their minds every day. It wasn't just media and what they heard, media and what they overheard, media and what they seen, what they read, but also posters, signs on the wall, rumours, all sorts of things. All you can do is make sure that you're using all the tools you can to get your right information out into that marketplace, and hopefully use all the other things that are available to you so that they complement, so that all that information goes back and feeds and complements, that it doesn't disjoint. So, despite the growth of these acronyms, MCOMs, modern communications, nothing strange about that, and Oasis engagement. And I remember the outcry, just as I was about to stub out my last illegal cigarette in 38 Brigade's headquarters and retire, the outcry that there was among the old and bold, because MOD and the Cabinet Office had signed up to Oasis And I remember all these old people who were still leading lights in media and comms and all sorts of theatres going ballistic. What are they doing to us? And I put a piece together for Pen and Sword saying, would you settle down? Would you stand easy? Because all it is what we've always been doing. It's just some other idiot has come up with another acronym. What is wrong with Oasis? Oasis is campaign planning. It's influence. It's long-term objectives. It's strategy. It's the implementation of the strategy. It's the identification of the messages. Just break it down simply. It's no different from what we were doing yesterday. So do what I do. Wander out, have a smoke, come back in, and it'll all have settled itself, and we'll crack on with it. But the constants that I mentioned earlier on of engagement that have always been so jealously guarded by journalists, those constants remain true. And those constants are the tips and techniques. And I haven't totally retired. I'm still playing at various things in various bits. But I'm actually helping and advising some sectors of industry, some charitable organisations on the vets front, and so forth, to use these texts and tips to get themselves out in the marketplace without having to recourse themselves to spending a fortune with PR companies. And it's working. I've been working with one company that deals in a niche market, quite a sizable market, Belfast, Dublin, London and Saudi. And they needed to reposition themselves and talk to others within that industry. It was easy to do it within their own structures, with a little bit of planning, a little bit of coordination, and a little bit of effort. And it's now taking over nicely, and they're doing quite well, thankfully. And others are doing the same. You're in a prime position because you can do exactly the same, just using the simple approaches to what is all around you. But the good position, in fact the great position that you're in, is that you have the support of the Defence Press Office to give you insight into those techniques, tips. I'll be honest with you, as a journalist, and Paul will probably agree, walk into the newsroom of old, you look at the news desk diary to see what story you're covering that day, and I remember the nightmare. Bombs, bullets, no problem. The story hits you in the face. But one day I was tasked to go and cover the annual accounts, the annual report of the Northern Bank. Now, luckily, my father was gardener to the chairman of the Northern Bank. I used to get a lift in with him into Belfast every month, so I knew if I could do the interview, that's not a problem. But what did I know about banking statistics? Absolutely nothing. But I needed to talk intelligently to gain information. And I fell back on an old principle. GOS. Goal, obstacle, strategy, success. What is it you actually tried to achieve this year? He told me. And you fell somewhat short. Why? Obstacle. He told me. Well, next year, do you have a plan over? And he told me. Strategy. And when you get there, of course you have dividends for the shareholders, but for the economy in general, success. I never once used a banking term, but I hit goal, obstacle, strategy, success, and he smiled at me and says, that went very well. And I got out, thank goodness. So there are simple ways of approaching all this. But without planning, without coordination, without careful exploitation, your positioning and messaging is in failure of falling into an abyss. Because, as you've seen, there's an awful lot of chatter out there. Facebook was fine a year ago. I'm thinking of binning 90% of the links that I have on Facebook. I don't want to read any more about who's had what for their dinner. I want something a little bit more sensible. So the chatter is out there. You need to break through that chatter. And that's very, very important and very, very vital. At best, that chatter will nullify your effort. It will not gain you points or get you up the scale. At the very worst, it could suck you into a self-generated crisis. And believe me, I've looked at some former colleagues making comment on political progress, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean colleagues in uniform too, and I think to myself, hold on a minute, did you not sign the Official Secrets Act? Who gives you the right to make comment, and why are you coming out with this against? It's a very dangerous field out there, and you need to be very careful. Yes, media release authority. I remember dishing that out to units. That was back in the days when the weekly papers were the weekly papers, the local on the patch. Today, look at those weekly papers. They all have their Facebook sites. They're all playing with Twitter. So they're on a global platform. So that engagement, you still have to engage with them. But quite honestly, that was a privilege then, designed only for low-level contact with the weeklies, to expose yourself within that community. It's a slightly more difficult, dangerous area now. It's an area that you still need to engage in, but it's an area you need to engage in with coordination and with the support of the press office as that safety umbrella. Get the tick in the box, this is the way to go, and then blame them if it goes wrong. Slope shoulders. Didn't say that, but crack on with it. But that's an important bit of it. That is one area where actually you really need to revisit that media release authority and rephrase it. Evolve. If you don't evolve, just the way the revolution of media is continuing, then disaster lies ahead. Now, I'm not here to give you a history lesson. I'm not here to drive out all those techniques and tips and whatnot. But what I would say to you is, I'm more than happy to do that. And I can use MCOMs. Leave a notebook over there. In fact, there's it sitting there, some cards. If you want to leave me an email, I can email you out a copy of this. I've already recorded it, it's on tape, so that you can hold me to account. I'm happy enough to pop down some drill now for half an hour if you need to stand easy, and we can rattle through some of those tips and techniques to everybody. There's no major drama over them. But what I would say is, do not leave here tonight without making sure that you have the contact details of the Defence Press Office in your hip pockets, and a pledge to yourselves to run them ragged. They deserve it, and they really look forward to it. So, over to the press office.
Okay, I just had to endorse everything but the last comment. I'm running ragged, not about it at all. Thanks very much, Ken, really appreciate that, and very valuable insights, and obviously so much experience there. I just wish I had that much experience, but I'll say,